Okay, let's get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Bryce Wakefield. I'm the National Executive Director and CEO of the Australian Institute of International Affairs. And I'm coming to you today from Canberra, which are the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal people. Joining me, we have Kiriloi, Dr. Kiriloi Ingram from up north you're in Brisbane at the moment, aren't you, Kiri? Say hello.
Hi everyone, I'm in Rockhampton in central Queensland.
And we have Kerry was a participant on the first cohort of this program, so she's here to give you insights from the perspective of a participant. And we have also got my fellow organizers. This program is organized jointly with the AIIA and the Japan Foundation. And we have Koike Wakao. Can you wave to us and say hello? Oh, well, there's too much background.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wakao. I'm from the Japan Foundation. I'm now in Tokyo head office. Nice to meet you all.
Good. And I guess the person who has had most to do with this program for the Japan Foundation in terms of programming activities is Ayumi Takita, who's also in Tokyo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ayumi Takita. Very nice to meet you.
If you're accepted to this program, you'll all have an opportunity to meet these people in person at some stage. So what is it? You're obviously here because you've read the application form and you're interested in the program. As I go along, please... Oh, no open questions. Let's change that, shall we? So as I go along, you will be able to ask questions in the Q&A if you have any questions about the program, and there'll be a time. I'll be reading them as I give this presentation, and I may choose to answer some of them along the way. And at the end of the presentation, there will be time for Q&A. So let's get started. And you can upvote the questions that you like best. So let's get started. What is this project? Right. So the Indo-Pacific Cooperation Network, we really want to stress that last word. This really is a person-to-person activity. It's a network of early career professionals focused on issues within the Indo-Pacific. Right, we will be doing, or you will be, if you are selected to this program, you'll be doing research on the particular topic of the year. But the real deliverable that we want to focus on is building a network of early career professionals across the region who can focus on topics specific to the region, right? Nurturing ties through multiple events around the region. Ayumi, do you want to say something about this?
Sure. So the core of this program is about really bringing people together and bringing emerging leaders from diverse backgrounds and disciplines, and to create a community of change makers. So this program, of course, offers an opportunity for you to advance your research and career, but it is not really not just an individual learning opportunity, but this is more of a platform for network and collaboration that will bring the positive change in the Indo-Pacific region. So that's what we, the Japan Foundation and the AIIA believes in the power of the collaboration.
Good. So as on the slide and the application form, we're focused on a particular issue each year. In theory, that issue could change. I think you can probably predict that it will be something year by year, assuming this program continues, focused on resilience issues. And that means that there is potential for multi-year interaction between the different cohorts as well. So we'll be talking about that soon. In terms of costs, this program will likely not cost you anything. The principle is that from the time that you arrive at a given destination and on one of the legs of the program, we will cover all of your accommodation, we'll cover all of your, well, we'll cover your flights to the destination as well. And we'll cover all entry fees and insurance and things like that that you need to participate in this program. There are a few exceptions, and we can go over those if you're accepted. But in principle, everything on this trip is supported by the project partners. You will not have to pay for the program activities. Right, so who can join this network? Well, there are, of course, eligibility requirements. This is an Indo-Pacific Cooperation Network. It means that you have to reside or be a citizen, reside in or be a citizen of Australia, Japan, or Indo-Pacific countries. Generally speaking, that means countries in the Indo-Pacific. So the Pacific Islands, Southeast Asia, South Asia, or the United States. There are, however, a number of countries with Indo-Pacific strategies and other links to the Indo-Pacific. If you can demonstrate a credible interest in an Indo-Pacific country and you may not live in the region, then you're welcome to try your luck and see what happens in the application process. You should be available to travel to the relevant locations at the relevant times, and these are listed on the application form that you will have seen by now. You need to be able to write and speak in English at a level that will allow you to communicate with other members of the cohort and to engage in fairly high-level research activities at the level of postgrad or so. You need to identify as an early career professional. Now, a lot of people don't know what this means. In most cases, what we're looking for are people who are 5 to 10 years out of their last university degree, particularly if it's a master's degree. We're not taking people who have just gone straight through and who are currently completing a master's degree. PhD candidates are a little different because we consider work done on a PhD to be part of your career, as it were. So you may find that that you might be an attractive candidate if you're doing a PhD. You may find that you'll be eligible for this course if you are, for example, a graduate student or a student who has significant life experience and is trying to sort of study in order to further their career. But in general, we're looking for people with a bit of experience behind them who are still making their way in their career. We would like you to have a strong interest in disaster resilience or Indo-Pacific affairs. And we'd also like you to demonstrate leadership capability. So is there anything in your activities that suggests that you're somebody who will take on challenging issues in the Indo-Pacific, particularly in disaster resilience? That's good. No questions yet. So let's move on to the next slide. Right, there are a number of there's a question here, are master's students with 10 years experience in the Indo-Pacific region eligible? Yeah, I mean, it depends on what your experience is, of course. If it's just living here, then you know, that may or may not be something that you would be that would count you in. We would generally hope that you have some sort of professional experience for this program. In any case, there are a number of components to this program. You can count them here. There are 5, but there are really 3 main components: Japan, Australia, and a third location. We will be going to Japan, or the cohort will be going to Japan in late July. I think we have blocked out July 22nd, the week of July 22nd for the trip. And we'll be meeting experts in Japan. I'll get to the specific details of the various trips later, but make sure that if you do apply for this program that you are available on each of these times. So late July 2024 for Japan. On the 10th and 11th of November, we will be holding the AIIA National Conference, and you will be invited to that, as well as other activities in Australia. And in February or March 2025, we'll be conducting a study tour in the Pacific, and this will most likely be in New Zealand and Fiji. So let's go into the specific activities that you'll be doing if you're accepted into this program. So the topic, again, this year is disaster resilience. Disaster resilience was the same topic that we did last year. We're keeping it the same this year because it was actually quite successful last year. We want people who have a clear focus on the social and political aspects of disaster resilience. Things like disaster communication and preparedness, passing on the memory of disaster, environmental protection during disaster, international disaster response, etc. We're not looking for people who, for example, measure the intensity of earthquakes and figure out what length of seismic waves are more dangerous than others, or something like that, right? This is not necessarily a program that is organized around the hard science of disaster. It's more focused on the social and political aspects of disaster and disaster resilience. So what we will do is focus on the nationally relevant areas of disaster resilience. If we're going to Japan, of course, that means earthquakes and tsunami. When we go to Fiji, we'll be focused a lot on weather-related events and climate-related events. And in New Zealand, we'll probably be focused on both, right? That doesn't mean that you and your personal research agenda has to focus on disaster resilience. You can be focused, on those areas of disaster resilience. You can be focused on other matters. However, we would expect, as part of this project, that you do focus to a certain extent on Japanese-related issues, because you're either going to be learning a lot about them, or you will know about them already. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily an advantage to have that knowledge baked in prior to going on the trip. This trip is about learning while you go. So what are we going to do in Japan? Here are some possible activities that, well, they're actually the activities that we did last year, and I would say that we'd be doing a lot of them again. A lot of what we'll be doing is traveling to Japan's north to visit places like Minami Sanriku, which was hit heavily by the 2011 earthquake and tsunami, and also places like Ishinomaki, where a school was devastated, and there were various legal and political issues associated with that devastation that you'll explore. We will discuss matters with Australian embassy officials and other experts within Tokyo, including at the National Disaster Resilience Center run by the Cabinet Office of Japan. Last year, we experienced a disaster response drill at the national broadcaster, NHK. And we will be doing this across various cities. So as I've already said, we're going up north to Sendai, Minami Sanriku, probably Ishinomaki, so those areas. And we'll also be going to Tokyo and Kobe, which is the site of a 1995, a particularly bad earthquake in 1995. We may also go to Osaka as well because to look at their various earthquake resilience measures. So we will be looking at topic-specific sites. So we'll be visiting earthquake-affected areas of the Northeast, as I said, Kobe, places like that. But, you know, the Japan Foundation and I are people who like you to know things about Japan. So from time to time, we'll also be visiting cultural-specific sites if they're on the way. So it's highly likely that we'll be visiting Kyoto or Nara, you know, the sites of ancient Japan, if you like, and looking at the various temples. We'll be also enjoying the local culinary delights at restaurants that either the team from the Japan Foundation or I have discovered and would like to recommend to you because we like them, and trying to find a local delicacies like here, gyutang in Sendai, which we didn't have last time. I think at this point, I'll sort of turn things over to Kiri and ask her if she has any personal observations about the trip to Japan that she'd like to share with you so that you can get a sort of experience from the viewpoint of a participant.
Sure, thanks, Bryce. Can you hear me okay, Bryce and Ayumi? Yep, excellent. So yeah, I mean, so the Japan trip was the first trip for the network last year. And it was a deep dive into disaster resilience. For me, so my background, I'm a university lecturer in political science. My background is in countering violent extremism, working with women in jihadist organizations. And so for me, it was a deep dive into the real impacts of disaster. So our first trip through to Sendai, I would say the highlight of the whole Japan trip for me was that Sendai section of the trip. When we visited the school, Okawa Elementary School, if I'm remembering the name correctly, that was the highlight for me for two reasons. First of all, it was really the most emotionally moving. I was really taken away by being in the place. You can see geographically why there was so much destruction, but then to learn afterwards about the social and cultural implications of the circumstances around what happened in that place, and then the political and legislative effects after that, and how it has shaped how the Japanese people respond to disaster. It was a deep dive that you will experience. I experienced it firsthand. So for me, that was the highlight of the Japan trip. But more than that, the Japan trip was incredible because you spoke to a diverse range of multi-sector stakeholders. You meet and you learn from the experiences of survivors of the tsunami and the earthquakes, which is, I mean, it's an incredible privilege to be able to hear those stories. But then you go through different layers. You go to the the peak national bodies that are developing legislation and policy to address the aftermath of disaster, to feed into disaster resilience. You're running through drills at the National Media Centre. So you're getting a wide picture of absolutely everything related to disaster resilience. And as an Australian, it was extremely eye-opening to me to see the complete disparity, from my perspective, the disparity between Japan's practice and Australia's practice. My friends and family are probably sick of me talking about the network because I have nothing but positive things to say about it. So I strongly encourage everybody to apply. It has shaped everything that I do now. It's shaping my research moving forward. It's brought disaster resilience into my everyday consciousness. I was just telling Bryce that I've been camping for the last 5 days out in central Queensland. And even just my approach to camping is different, thinking about what will happen if there's a bushfire, for example. But I'll leave it there. I'm sure I'll talk again a little bit later.
Yeah. It will change your life. if you come on this trip with us. Excellent. Thank you, Kiri. Right. Now we will be doing research on this trip. It is about the network, but we are there will be specific sort of points at throughout the entire program. We will stop you and we'll say, look, this is now the next sort of stage in the research session. This is the specific task that we want you to achieve, etc., etc. Along the way, you'll be meeting with international experts, and we'll probably be inviting diplomats and whatnot to the dinners that we have, so that you can get to know people along the way in a sort of informal session, but they'll also be in the study sessions with you. The cohort, which will consist of 15 people, will divide itself into 3 groups, and you will each develop a topic that your group is going to focus on, right? So you'll have a subtopic on disaster resilience. And the idea here is to try and get you to work on some sort of collaborative project. Now, what the sort of requirements for this are fairly loose, right? We're not going to determine this is the project that you have to do. It might be a book. It might be a special edition of an academic journal. It might be a single multi-authored journal article. It might be pieces for our online publication, Australian Outlook. It might be a special report that we can publish and send around our branches at the AIIA. The form of the research is not too determinative, but you will be encouraged along the way to act collaboratively with your peers, right? So it's an ongoing collaborative task. I think we'll probably be stopping at Kobe to talk with experts at the Disaster Resilience Center there. Last year, we had a session at the Australian Embassy. This is not the group, but it is the room where we had that session, which we used for a different thing a few years back. So the point of the research is to keep you interacting as a group, and this interaction should, in theory, and did in the previous year, take place between the formal kind of study tour sessions that we do throughout the project. So you're going to keep in touch with everybody in the network as your research progresses. You'll also, of course, keep in touch with everybody on social media. We'll set up a WhatsApp group, and everybody will be able to exchange ideas and talk to one another. And, if you need information about, when the next session is or whatever, I will be on that group. And so will various assistants within the AIIA to help you along, as well as AIIMI. Good. Okay, so the next leg of the tour is the Australian bit. And there are several parts to the Australian leg of the tour. Perhaps the first part that you're going to do is the national conference, which consists of activities over 2 days. The first day will be November 10th, and those are masterclasses here in Canberra, right? You will have guaranteed entry to the masterclasses. A lot of people either have to sponsor us or pay to apply. You've got guaranteed entry into the masterclasses with about 120 other early career professionals and students, a lot of whom come from around not only Australia, but Australia's region as well. We do have quite an international crowd that attends these. In addition to the masterclasses themselves, so there'll generally be a keynote speaker. In previous years, we've had the Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, Tim Watts. I did it last year. And then we have a lunch networking session where you can all get together and talk about not only disaster resilience with the cohort, but the interests of the other, 105, I guess, early career professionals and students around Australia. There will be a disaster resilience masterclass, which you will attend during this session, like 90 minutes with practitioners in the field. And then you'll have one other masterclass that you'll be able to choose, probably on something related to Australian foreign policy or things that Australians view as important. And then we will have a dinner reception, and the tradition here each year is to hold it at an embassy. Last year it was the Embassy of Japan. We tend not to rely too heavily on our embassy friends year on year, so we'll be doing it at a different embassy this year. It hasn't absolutely been confirmed yet, but this year it'll be at an African country, and we'll be having African food, which will be fantastic. And then there's the National Conference and Gala Dinner on November the 11th, right? The National Conference is what we like to call the premier annual conference on Australian foreign policy. Panels are about the priorities of Australia. This year, the theme of the conference is scheduled to be Facing Fragmentation, Possibilities and Partnerships in a Fragile World. And we'll be looking at how, in particular, people in Australia's region view Australian foreign policy. So we'll have panels on and featuring Pacific speakers imparting their expertise, but also people from Asia and particularly Southeast Asia. We'll be looking at the role of the private sector in the formulation of Australian foreign policy, and we'll also have a panel on whether or not the multilateral international system is beyond its use by date, let's say. Now, this will be held around 1 week, less than 1 week, I think, after the US presidential election. And as you will know, the United States is Australia's longtime ally. So we have a panel called A Great and Powerful ? Looking at America's role in the world and whether its influence in this region is waning and what Australia needs to do about it. If you want to have a look at the sort of examples of things you'll see at the National Conference, you can go to the AIIA nationalconference.org website. Unfortunately, though, we haven't quite, and it'll come in a few weeks, we haven't quite put the 2024 conference online, but you can see the 2023 conference, and you can also see a video of that conference in your application form in order to get an idea of the types of things we'll be discussing. Now, at the conference, we do have fairly elevated keynote speakers. We aim for people on a ministerial level in Australia, and we also aim for high-level international guests. Last year at the Gala Dinner, which you will all be invited to attend, we had, for example, this gentleman here with the wine glass. His name is Aso Taro. He is the former Prime Minister of Japan and a very powerful politician in that country, where he gave a very interesting speech about Sino-Australian and Sino-Japanese relations and prospects for Japan within AUKUS, which you can view on our YouTube channel, AIIA Vision. Kerry, any insights into the conference?
Yeah, the conference was fantastic, particularly attending the more intimate masterclasses that occurred prior to the conference. But in terms of the national conference alone, for me, the most valuable insight I got was being able to sort of zoom out and get a macro perspective on why alliance in the Indo-Pacific, particularly in emergency management and disaster resilience, is so important from a political perspective. And so my advice to those of you who get into the second network is use the national conference as an opportunity to, one, network, but to really gain insight into more diverse perspectives on the Indo-Pacific, because it's a fantastic opportunity to do so. I mean, you'll already be in a very diverse network of early career professionals, both multidisciplinary and in terms of the country representation. But the network is just on a whole nother level, bring together, as Bryce said, ministerial figures who have played extremely important roles in the Indo-Pacific historically and continue to today. And so that I found it very helpful for developing my research program within the network. Yeah.
All right. Now, something that is an innovation this year, we didn't do it last year, is that we are going to, well, we did do a few sort of things last year in terms of studying Australian disaster resilience, but we're really going to focus a lot more on Australia. So the first new thing that we're going to institute this year is that we're bringing back all of the cohort from last year. The first network, if you like, on the Indo-Pacific Cooperation Network cohort will be brought to Canberra for a reunion and also to meet the new cohort. So you all get to mix and mingle with the people. You can tell them by that stage about your trip to Japan. You can ask them questions about the upcoming trip to the South Pacific. And we will also be doing the new network, not the old network. We'll also be doing a mini tour around Australia. It's likely that this will be firstly in Canberra. We'll be meeting officials from the National Emergency Management Agency, but we're also looking at doing a tour down south of Canberra and around the south coast, in particular to focus on the bushfires that took place in those localities around the beginning of 2020, right? So we'll probably be talking to people who are involved in those activities, people from the fire brigade, surf lifesavers, people who are sometimes voluntary, sometimes professional respondents to disaster resilience. I hope that we'll be traveling to a national park to discuss the preservation of biodiversity during bushfires, because of course biodiversity is a big part of climate resilience. We may, I hope we will be able to talk to somebody from the Indigenous community around those areas who might be able to teach us about Indigenous approaches to disaster resilience, or traditional approaches to disaster resilience, and what we might learn from them. And we'll almost certainly be travelling to one of Australia's largest state capital cities like Sydney or Melbourne to discuss resilience with state officials, because as was abundantly clear on the last trip, disaster resilience has several layers, and the local government or state government responses to disaster resilience are particularly important, particularly in Australia. Right. And then in February, March, we will take off to the South Pacific, and it's likely the two countries that we will go to are Fiji and New Zealand. Last year it was Fiji and Tonga. We did a number of activities in Fiji last year. They're listed here. I will actually just let Kiri tell you what she thought was the most valuable part of her experience in Fiji. So take it away, Kiri.
Great. Yeah. So if I can, I'm going to highlight two things, if that's okay. So on one of the first few days in Fiji, we visited a more remote village, the Naloa village, where we had a really beautiful traditional welcome, but we were also taken on a tour around the village where they showed us the very real impact that climate change is having on the village. So they showed us the encroaching waters that have come close to the houses, 40, I think it was about 40 meters or so in the last couple of decades. They showed us their ways of trying to prevent erosion of their village, and discuss the political issues that they're having in trying to secure support to what they would like to do is to build a seawall. So that was one of the highlights of that trip, was seeing firsthand the very real impact that the rising waters are having on that village. The other highlight for me from the trip was, and this ties into all of our study tours, all of the 3 trips, was that in every single location we went to, both Fiji, Tonga, as well as Japan and Australia, we went to the peak national body that governs all emergency management and disaster resilience in that country. So it was a fantastic opportunity to compare and contrast national responses. And I would recommend you try to do so in the first trip. Try to narrow out the scope of your research project early on so that you can be asking targeted questions throughout every single tour that you do. Because my focus was looking at institutional emergency management and the gendered nature of that emergency management. At every single national body, I was able to ask very specific questions that helped me with my research project. And so the way that each of these tours are designed is really perfect for you to fulfill your research objective and finish this with a publication. And again, it's having that that engagement with all levels. You're talking to, you're visiting remote villages that are impacted by climate change and disaster. You're speaking to survivors of the the volcano and the tsunami that occurred in Tonga. You're talking to policy practitioners. You're talking to first responders. So it's a fantastic opportunity. For me, again, the highlight was having that diversity of experience. Yeah, thanks.
Good. Okay, we've almost come up to questions, but I'll just finish off by saying there is one very special part of the program, and it lasts for about a day, and that's the final research presentation. So where we end up, and our last stop is likely to be New Zealand, and we'll likely be focused, of course, on earthquakes there, because that's a feature of New Zealand thinking on disaster, especially after the 2011 Christchurch earthquake. But we may also look at volcanoes and New Zealand's role in cooperating in the Pacific on weather events. But at some stage, at probably the final day of the activities, we will have a research day, and that will firstly give you the opportunity to give us some feedback on how you think the event went, or how you think the program went, and also to talk to finalize really where you are going with your research, what shape it is taking, in terms of what it's going to look like as a deliverable, but also what the content is, and then we will let you go to do it, with the goal that you will be done by mid-year 2025 sometime, and we will be checking up on you to that extent. We hope, should the program continue into the future, that we'll also all be bringing you back for a reunion and inter-cohort meeting, just as we are going to do with the first cohort. So that's the program, and if you have any questions, it's a good time to start typing now, and we will answer some of the questions that have come through already. Okay, I think this one was actually already answered after it was typed, but how do you define disaster resilience, e.g. climate change, or question mark? Yeah, well, I mean, look, disaster resilience is a broad topic. Of course, climate-related disasters are disasters. Without any more specificity to the question, I don't think I can go any further, except to say that, it's a broad church. We're actually looking for a number of people from a number of different backgrounds. That's one of the criteria is kind of fit as well, right? We are looking for a sort of diverse network, so that the knowledge of one member of the network will enhance the whole network, if you like. So if you have a particular take on disaster, either the types of disaster or the way that you interact with disaster resilience in your professional background, that is a little bit of out of left field, that might actually be quite attractive to us. So, for example, somebody is asking, accidental and natural maritime disasters and nexus to maritime diplomacy are my area of interest. Is it relevant? Well, yes, it is. All right. Please do try and, in your application, do try and frame that field in a way that will be relevant to the countries we are considering, and relevant to the field of disaster resilience as a theoretical topic in general. We do have a few questions related to eligibility. I don't want to be too specific in my answers about eligibility, because the eligibility criteria are already there. They're already quite clear, I think. So I think basically, if you're on this webinar, I have a sneaking suspicion that you're probably eligible for this program, because you're here, you've read the eligibility criteria, and you think you might have a shot. So what I would suggest, because it's not a particularly onerous process, at least in the beginning, is for you to throw your hat in the ring and apply, and we'll assess your application, and we'll let you know. Question about visa expenses. Are they covered? Yes, within reason. Basically, we're not, the visa expenses are generally a marginal cost, and we'll generally be happy to cover them. But having said that, you will have to apply for those visas yourself. We don't want to shepherd you through the process of applying for a visa. I think we will give you links to the visa information for the relevant countries, and you will have to make sure that you're eligible and that you can apply for a visa there. We do have a question about research ethics, whether we will be doing anything to police research ethics on this trip. The answer to that question really is not really. If you are in a discipline, and that's usually within academia, that requires you to receive approval for research ethics before you interview human subjects, for example, then that is something that is your responsibility and that you will have to look out for. It's not really up to us to understand the institutional dynamics of your university or institution and figure out what is required for you to do research. Is there a scope to research the coordination and factors impacting aeromedical aviation humanitarian response? Yes, if that's what you want your research to be, and you can find a way to make it fit with the parameters of this project, then sure. Do you have rough dates for the Fiji New Zealand trip in March? No, they will be in February or March. We may want to have a discussion about that and try and find a place where we are mutually available. So we'll have a chat. I realize the dates are not fixed for February or March. Ayumi and I will have a discussion about that and place more precise dates on the application form on the website. Is there scope for this research to fit into larger long-term climate resilience in disaster resilience? What do you think, Kiri?
Yes.
There's scope for this research to fit into larger long-term, your larger long-term research on any aspect of disaster resilience.
Yeah, I just to jump in, Bryce, I just wanted to say that one of the greatest benefits of the network is you have the ability to carve out your own research interest. So long as you're contributing to the larger body and you're able to foster collaboration with with other members of your network, you can really explore anything. So as I said, I'm interested in gender and gender-based violence, and so I was looking at the gendered nature of emergency management institutions and then the gendered effects that disaster has on people. I carved that out really early on, and I was able to pursue that. And you can do exactly the same. Like the diversity of topics you can choose, it's up to you. You just have to make it fit, and you will be mentored and supported by Bryce and the Japan Foundation along the way.
Yeah. Similarly, we've got a question here: is the our legal or approaches to legal aspects or the legal framework of disaster resilience, would that be of interest? Yeah, it's look, if it's related to the topic, and you can credibly say that you have some sort of expertise or understanding of that topic, or you want to develop an expertise or understanding of that topic, then absolutely, it's not. You know, we are looking for a broad range of specific interests on disaster resilience. Yeah, so we do have questions again about eligibility. Again, the eligibility criteria are quite clear, I think. But in general, we are looking for somebody with a bit of experience. It's not a hard and fast rule. By no means is it a hard and fast rule, but we're looking for people with a bit of experience. And if it's in the disaster resilience field, that's great. But there are other fields as well where you may be, for example, a journalist who is trying to develop their understanding of disaster resilience and doesn't have that background. That may well be something that we would be willing to consider. But in general, we are looking for people who already have a bit of an understanding about where they're going in their careers. Size of the cohort is 15 people, and you will meet the other, hopefully all 15 of the other the first cohort in Australia, but yeah, 15 is the size of the cohort. What were the skills that were most helpful for the prior cohort? Kiri, you can answer that one, or maybe Ayumi, I don't know if you want. Kiri, you go first.
Okay, skills that were most helpful for the prior cohort. I would say the very first thing, which I think there was consensus amongst the whole first cohort, is that come prepared to learn, and be able to admit when you don't know something. That's really, really important. You're going into this not knowing the answers, and you're there to do research. So the first thing is, come in, I guess, with a humble attitude. You're there to learn. You're there to learn from each other. You're there to hear about other people's experiences, including survivors of disaster. You have to be humble when you're speaking to survivors of disaster. So that's probably the first skill I would say, which is the most important. Secondly, being able to do research is extremely helpful, and I think that's why the criteria is there that really you're an early career professional who has completed studies before. So be able to do critical research, be able, have analytical skills, be able to ask good questions. It is going to be very much up to you to ask questions on these tours with the people that you're meeting with. And the third most important skill, I think, is being able to work with others. It is a network. I think the best thing about this experience, if you put aside what you learn in country, it's actually being with the other 14 people that you're with. It is truly, truly a multidisciplinary network. It is so diverse in terms of the country representation. I've never had an experience like it before coming on this network. And so being able to talk to others, to make friends with others, and this is coming from somebody who is extremely shy. I don't like talking to people, and I was very scared to go. When I got accepted into this, I was very, very scared because I am a shy person. But it's a fantastic opportunity. So be open to learning, be open to making friends, and hone your research.
Ayumi, do you want to say anything about that?
I think Kiri touched on all the very important things, and what impressed me about the first cohort, was really their ability to really learn and observe what they see, and also ability to articulate what you have learned, and also and by the time you have selected, you have exceptional research skills and qualifications, and you are willing to share it with the others, and also embracing the diversity. I think those are the qualifications that I have most impressed with the first cohort.
Yeah. Koike-san, do you want to say anything or? No, you're fine. Yeah, I think it's very, very helpful to remember that this is a human network, right? So, it's the cooperation network. We were at some stage thinking of calling it the research network, but we really want to stress the fact that this is about bringing people together so that you form a network that's going to be with you for the rest of your life, that can focus on issues of importance within the Indo-Pacific. And that means that you have to be somebody who's willing to be supportive of other people on the network. It's no good if you just come along and decide to do your own little bit of research and just want to focus on that, and that's it. This is a network about making friends, and hopefully investing in those friendships will help you to develop your career, but more importantly, I guess, also develop solutions to problems in the region. Now, do we have any more? We do still have questions about eligibility criteria. Again, I'm not going to be too specific on eligibility criteria. They are in the application, and I would ask you to read the applications. We do have a question on whether or not there are targets for the individual countries. This is a project put together by an Australian institution and a Japanese institution about the Indo-Pacific. I don't really want to be too Procrustean to say, there are going to be 6 or 7 members from Australia or 4 members from Australia and so many from Japan, etc., etc. You can assume that there will be a good whack of the cohort might have some Australian or Japanese background. But just to give you an example, last year of the 15 members of the cohort, we could count about 13 different nationalities. Now, of course, that's a lot more complicated than it sounds, because a lot of people were dual citizens or were citizens of one country but resident in another. But we are looking for a broad and diverse and interesting group, because if you're all the same, we think that kind of defeats the purpose of a network. If you wanna hang around with people who do the same things that you do, then go to a conference, like an academic conference, if you're an academic, for example, right? This is about getting to know a broad range of people, so that if at some stage you need information or assistance on a particular topic that you're not really familiar with, then you can go out and connect with people that you will know through this network. Gosh, there's so many more questions. So I'm gonna keep going. We were scheduled to finish at 4, but if we don't get through a lot of them, I might go a little bit over time. Although most of them are about eligibility again. Some of them are saying, thanks for the answer. Written work. Are you expected to submit written work in your application? Look, you don't have to, but if you link, for example, you can, a standard CV will include your publications in it if they're relevant to the topic, right? So of course you can put your publication in there and put a link to it. And if we review your application and think you're a strong candidate, we'll probably read your article to determine whether or not we want to bring you on board. So yes is the answer to that. Is there a preference among disasters? Not really. Obviously, we are going to 3 different countries with 3 different profiles. But as I said, again, we're looking for a broad network. We're looking for diversity. So you might find that if you focus on something that's a little bit of out of left field, it may actually be an advantage to you. There's a question here about someone living in Australia and hasn't yet taken Australian citizenship. that's irrelevant. You don't have to be a citizen of either Australia or Japan. Citizenship is generally not that significant of a criteria in this program. When will the results be notified? Well, if it's anything like last year, we notified all of the applicants within a week or two of the deadline. Is that right, Ayumi? That's my memory. Depends on how many applications we get. We are, yeah, well, I won't mention that, but I would expect it's the same time frame. We have put aside time in that first week of June to assess the applications. What languages other than English were most helpful during the program? Look, linguistic ability is always a good thing, but English, the program is conducted in English. You won't need any other languages to do this program, but of course, if you know your ability to speak a particular language has lent to your knowledge of disaster resilience in one way, shape, or form, then that is an advantage, I would say. Would the Japan trip commence from before the 22nd or July or on the 22nd? Look, I would say that we will be in Tokyo on either the 21st or the 22nd, and you would have to get to Tokyo before then. Yes, Sayumi, is that correct? Yep. What opportunities have last year's participants been able to pursue thanks to their experience with the network? Kerry, you can answer that one.
Yeah, so a lot. I know one of the members of our cohort actually just started a new job with NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency in Australia.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Gabe.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, so I hope I was allowed to announce that on a recorded. Sorry, Gabe. But yeah, so he just started working with NEMA, which is really fantastic. He you know, I'm not just collaborating with the 4 other members of my research group on a journal article, but I also presented with another member of the cohort at the Inspector General for Emergency Management conference, which was held in Queensland last year. As a result of that, and as a result of being a part of the network, we were then invited to submit a journal article to the Australian Journal of Emergency Management, specifically on the purpose of the network and our research areas. So that's another opportunity that I've had out of this. I know that there are other members in the research group from the first year. I think there's about 2 or 3 different what's the word for it? My mind is blanking. 2 or 3 different applications for further funding to do more research into the intersection of health and disaster, for example. So that I think there's 3 of those at the moment. It's really ongoing. And I think that's the other thing about the network is don't think of it as being just you're here for 1 year and then that's done. I think the purpose of the network is that you continue collaborating with not just this cohort, but other networks for years into the future, which is exactly what is happening with my network. So I'm not just working with people in my research group, I'm working with a lot of people in the network and aiming to do so well into the future.
Yeah, and you know, it is our intention to make this, already it is, I think, a high-profile program that people will recognize in the future. It's already been, well, the Japan Foundation has already been recognized by the White House for co-organizing this and a similar program run out of Honolulu, I think. Anyway, the East-West Center. So it is something that has already got legs, and I think you can expect as a member of this program to be able to use it in your, not only in terms of the network but in terms of the prestige in years going forward. So So that's good. I don't have any more questions unless somebody's going to thrash out one right now, but no, I don't think so. And we're well past 4 o'clock anyway. So I'd like to thank my co-conspirators here, Kiri and Ayumi, and my silent partner, Koike-san. Good to see you all. And we hope to see your applications. We hope to see some really high quality people apply this year, and we hope to see people who approach disaster resilience, want to approach disaster resilience from a wide range of backgrounds and interests. And that's already happening, but you've got until I think the 31st of May to get your application in. So we'll see you then. We'll be posting this video on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, AIIA Vision, for those of you who want to repeat performance without the questions. Until we may see you in Tokyo, then I would bid you adieu. Although I do want to say one more thing. The AIIA National Conference is not just open to network participants. Anybody can join. So keep an eye out for that as well, even if you don't get into the network. If you don't get into the network as well, we'll be keeping your details on file unless you tell us not to, so that we might approach you for other opportunities that the AIIA offers from time to time. So thanks so much, and I'll see you anon. Bye, everybody.